I'm about to share with you the 5 worst things about going on a cruise to Antarctica. Hi, I'm Gary Bembridge, and this is another of my tips for travelers. What possibly could be the worst parts of an Antarctica cruise? Well, here you go. First of all, the cost. It is an incredibly expensive experience. You're likely to spend between $10,000 and $15,000, and that's not even on a luxury kind of experience. The cheapest you're probably going to find something is around about, just for the cruise alone, around about $6,500. So it is a very, very expensive experience, and there are a number of key costs. You have the cruise only cost. You then have to get to a shire, so you're going to have to either fly to Buenos Aires and onto Ushuaia, or what a lot of cruises do is you fly to Santiago and then across to Ushuaia. Then you also have to have very specific gear. Now you can hire the gear, so some cruise lines will have relationships with some suppliers so you can actually hire the equipment, but you are going to have to invest or rent equipment. There's very specific boots you need, there's different layers you need, hats, sunglasses, there's a lot of gear that you need. And so there's a whole lot of cost involved with that. For many people, the worst part of an Antarctica cruise is not even the cost, it's the getting there. So to get to the Antarctic Peninsula and the South Shetland Islands, which is where most of the cruises go to, you have to cross Drake Passage. Drake Passage has the roughest seas that you can possibly imagine in the world. It doesn't matter what time of year you go, it's very unpredictable. Some people would experience what's known as the Drake Lake, which is a very calm, flat sea. Most people will actually experience Drake Shake, which can be pretty rough. So we had a great crossing actually. We had around about 4 to 5 meters swells, but it's very unpredictable. So for example, the cruise before us, they couldn't even leave on the first day because there were 10 to 12 meter swells. It then calmed down the next day and was almost completely flat. So make sure that you've got seasick remedies and whatever works for you, and be prepared for rough seas. You may be lucky and not have it, but getting there for many people is the worst. I know people who've been to Antarctica, they spent 2 days in bed, seasick there, 2 days in bed, seasick going back. The other thing which could be the worst part of an Antarctic cruise is the unpredictable nature of the weather. It can constantly change and you can't predict it no matter what time of the year you go, and it can change incredibly fast. So I experienced that, we'd have really lousy weather in the morning until 10 o'clock, and then suddenly it would clear up and we'd have blue skies. Fog would come in, fog would disappear. So very, very unpredictable weather. And also what's very important is it all depends on the ice and how the ice moves. So there is no set schedule. They have a rough plan of where they want to try and go to, but they have to reassess it based on what the ice is, how the ice has moved. You can't assume anything. The landings may or may not happen, so they may be cancelled because of too much swell or the weather's too lousy. So it's very unpredictable. So you may spend all that money, go all the way to Antarctica and have a so-so experience because the weather is very unpredictable. Now, of course, the cruise companies go to huge trouble to make sure that they find a way of making sure that you do see amazing things. But bear in mind, the worst part of it is it's just completely unpredictable. The other thing is it's a very short season, so there's only very few months of the year that they can actually cruise to Antarctica. So the season starts towards the end of October. However, most ships only really start going towards the end of November because the ice by then is starting to break up and they can get through. And the season really ends for most companies towards the end of February, beginning of March. Some companies will go a little bit later than that. The real peak of the season is December, January. That's also when it's warmest. So it is a very short season, so you don't have a lot of flexibility about when you can go. The fact that the season is so short is also what, of course, drives the cost and availability. So one of the things that you'll find with Antarctica is people book way, way in advance to make sure that they can get the cabin they want at the price they want at the time they want. So planning really early is really, really important. Now, in my view, one of the worst things that you could do is to go to Antarctica on a big ship. This is really, really important because the rules in Antarctica are very strict about being able to land. Only ships with around about 200 passengers actually can land in Antarctica. So you're only allowed to have 100 people at any one landing site at one time, and the amount of ships that can go to a landing site over a period of time is also really regulated. So though some bigger ships are going down to Antarctica, those are going to only be cruise-by cruises, and they tend to stay much more up north. So you're not going to get many of the experiences that I spoke about. So you're not going to get in amongst the penguins. You're not going to get really close to whales. You're not going to get it up amongst the seals. You're not going to get to climb up and look at rookeries. You're basically going to do only the sail-by experiences. So of course you're going to be able to tick the box that you went to Antarctica, but for me it's going to be really frustrating because you're going to be so close but not really there. So one of the worst things in my view you could do is go to Antarctica on a big ship. Make sure that you go on one of the smaller expedition ships. So for example, the ship that I was on, which is Silver Cloud, that was great because the ship was small enough. It also fell within all the regulations, and we could do all of the landings because we'd go out in groups of around about 100 at a time on the landings. Overall, the experience of Antarctica is phenomenal, and I have to say that it beat every expectation I had. The worst things are never ever going to get in the way of making it a magical experience. It is incredibly expensive to go, but really it is a magical place, and I would strongly recommend do whatever you can to save to one day go to Antarctica. I hope you found this helpful, interesting, inspiring. If you did, I'd love it if you watched many more of my Tips for Travelers videos. They're designed to help you make the most of your precious travel time and money, whether it's on land, on sea, or on the rivers of the world.